I used to be respectable because I only spoke about the one thing that this group was all talking about, Scottish independence, or whatever this cause might have been. That made me respectable. I was a performing monkey. Recently, I made the decision to stop using social media, sites like Twitter and Facebook, because I grew tired of all the anger and all the hatred I would find on my social feeds. I did quite well on social media. I had a respectable following, I still do, largely because of my involvement in the Scottish campaign for independence. I'm not a nationalist, I'm a socialist. I believed and still believe that the best way to have a good future for my country, one that's more socially equitable for the Scottish people, is a future of independence. But we lost that campaign. And like all lost political campaigns, those on the losing side can get bitter and angry. In the campaign for independence, there was a great many nationalists. Now, nationalism in particular has a propensity, when frustrated, to look for scapegoats and to blame others for its ills. Many of the people with whom I have worked with in Scotland and around the world of a more nationalist opinion, and I'm not even talking ethno-nationalists, I'm talking the quote-unquote civil nationalists, in their frustration have started looking for people to blame for all of their problems. Now, I'm talking about Scotland, but we live in the age of Donald Trump and DeSantis and a lurch to the right of political opinion that has been going on for at least the past 10 to 15 years, and things have only gotten worse. The scapegoats I first saw being sought on my social media feed were transgender people. This is something I won't pretend to understand. I'm not gay. I'm not a member of the LGBTQ community. I'm not transgender. But I do understand that this is part of someone's identity. And as Pope Francis said, who am I to judge? I can only accept people as they present themselves to me. I might not understand it, I may be confused by it, but I don't have a reason to hate people for their identity. I have to trust that God doesn't make mistakes. So I took a stand against the constant hate and demonization of transgender people that I was seeing constantly on my social media feeds. And very suddenly I found myself cast in my network of friends as the enemy, that I had been captured by some ideological force out to create chaos and sow chaos. And this has gone on and on now for a number of years, spreading from the American religious right and political voices in the States and in the UK, trying to make political capital from jumping on a bandwagon that isolates, scapegoats, and victimizes a tiny minority of people. But the straw that broke the camel's back was the immediate events on social media around the recent riots in Paris, where once again I was seeing people I knew, people who over the past number of years have been collaborating with and working with as, fellow travellers in the political campaign for Scottish independence, take a hard right, Islamophobic and deeply racist attitude towards those protesting in Paris and over France after the shooting by the police of a 17-year-old child. Once again, I was seeing and reading deeply Islamophobic comments and the treatment of Muslims as aliens, and comments about Islam being incompatible with Western values. Ultimately, certainly with Elon Musk himself, quite openly racist in his opinions, calling the shots on Twitter at least, I felt I can't wage a one-man campaign against just the stream of hate against Muslims, against gay people, against trans people, against everyone. And it all comes, at least in my head, as part of a massive package of frustration and rage being vented against people. So I want to think about how we as Christians encounter Islam as the other, rather than just lazily demonizing them as foreigners or as aliens or as followers of a religion incompatible with our values. Well, what are our values? If people in the United States are watching this, then your values to me would appear to be the worship of the gun. This is a society that you live in where there are school shootings every other day, where there are more mass shootings now than there have ever been. Is that a culture to be celebrated? Is that freedom and democracy? I don't know what we mean by this term, our values and our way of life. And I don't mean to be picking on the United States. There are plenty of problems with our values here in Ireland or in my own country over the water in Scotland and in England and all over Europe, in the so-called white or Christian world, which are just ideas we make up. There are problems. There are deep cultural, social, and historical problems with this construct of our values and the world of, our world. So, how do we encounter Islam without that sense of prejudice and without immediately jumping on all of the Islamophobic tropes and assumptions that only serve to other people and make them more alien to us rather than the other human beings who they are? I've grown up in a time where iconic horror movies such as The Exorcist open with the call to prayer from the mosque. A film that is meant to be an exploration of demonic evil begins with the Islamic call to prayer, instructing the Western imagination of the inherent darkness or evil of Islam. And this happens at a barely conscious level. This is just a movie, but yet it has sunk deep into our psyche, not just from horror movies, but from lots of our culture that have drip-fed us this idea of the danger or the darkness or the evil of Islam, creating this false idea of the clash of civilizations. Since 9/11, we have seen a resurgence in Islamophobia that might only be compared to the time of the Crusades. And now, in my own social media feeds, seeing this rhetoric return with a vengeance. I haven't seen it in a number of years, and I was quite happy to see it disappear. Immediately before the pandemic lockdown, there was all over British, Irish, European, even Australian social media, a racist campaign to ban the burqa. and an ongoing talk, even coming from the British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, describing Muslim women as postboxes, jokes about faces being covered. But then the pandemic and the mask mandates put us all in the same position. We were all wearing masks, and very suddenly the anti-Islamic and the attack on the burqa and the hijab and the niqab just disappeared because we were all wearing face coverings. And I was quite happy to see this go away, but it never quite went away because now it's proliferating. Events in France in recent weeks have brought it back to the fore. And I want to think about Islam and about Muslims as human beings just like us. And just quite randomly flicking through shorts on YouTube, I came across quite a tremendous little video that I'd like to share. And it's two Muslim sisters singing. Their father is playing the guitar and they're singing a praise song. It's Islamic, it's in Arabic, and the only words of it I understand are about the messenger of God. So I want us just to take a few moments, just calm your spirit for a second, and let this moment of beauty that you might not understand the words to just wash through you for a moment. And as you're listening to this and as you're watching this incredibly wholesome video, I want you just to think about all the hateful and ignorant assumptions we so often see in our culture about Muslims and about Islam. And I just want you to think about the joy of this moment and the creativity and the genuine wholesomeness of this tiny little nugget of Muslim culture.
بكل الأنبياء يا من في قلبك رحمة للناس يا من ألفت قلوبا بالإسلام يا حبيبي يا شافعي يا رسول الله يا أمي وأبي فديتك سيدي صلاة وسلام عليك يا نبي حبيبي يا
It's incredible, isn't it? That has been seen more than 66 million times on YouTube. And for all of the language that we are subjected to about Islam being a religion of hate and about Muslims being people of violence, it's impossible to hold on to those very wrong assumptions when we look at this beautiful image of two wee girls singing a praise song to the God they worship, who is the God we worship, because we, like all Muslims and like all Christians and like all Jews, believe in just one God. We may worship that God differently. We may understand the revelation of our God differently. Yes, all of that is true, but that doesn't for a single moment take away from the validity of people's witness to God in their lives in their sadness, in their happiness, in their joy. And when I saw this little short, I was deeply touched, because I can't accept the assumptions of Islam as hateful, as destructive, and is not part of our society. When I look back at my own experience on social media, one thing that really stuck in my craw was the reason people were rejecting me and people like me. Only yesterday did I see a comment posted in response to something someone had said about me. Sorry to make this about me. I'm not going to start crying about the treatment I've received, but just this message as to why people don't want to listen to people who won't confirm them in their intolerance. Dylan said, I used to follow Jeggett. That's my name on Twitter. He turned into a virtue signaller, trying to please the inclusive crowd, and went right down the pan since 2019. He used to be a respectable independent supporter until he jumped on the passing bandwagons. I used to be respectable because I only spoke about the one thing that this group was all talking about, Scottish independence, or whatever this cause might have been. That made me respectable. I was a performing monkey. But when all of that ended and we started going back to normal on social media, when our only discussion wasn't just about this one political campaign, people began to see that others around them weren't just the same as them, that I wasn't prepared to accept intolerance. So this made me unacceptable. It made me a virtue signaller, that I'm not prepared to be transphobic or homophobic. These things are evil. To hate people for who they are is a form of evil. It's a cancer in our society. To be a racist is deeply evil too. And no, at no point during the campaign for independence was I prepared to be Anglophobic, to hate English people living in Scotland, to reject anyone who wasn't ethnically Scottish, or as the right wing of the Scottish independence media has started using, Indigenous Scottish people, this term Indigenous. No, I'm not prepared to be racist or homophobic or transphobic. I'm not prepared to indulge other people or confirm them in their intolerances. And when they wish to present Muslims in particular as a danger to us, as alien to us, as not compatible to our way of life, then I'm not going to confirm people in that. What we see from Muslims is humanity, just the same humanity as ours. Those two little girls could be any two little girls making a TikTok video, two kids enjoying themselves, sharing a part of their deep spiritual religious tradition in the everydayness of their life. If you want to take anything away from this, then it would be simply not to be afraid of encountering others. Scripture says that often when we entertain strangers, we entertain angels. This I believe to be really true. We don't need to have the same religion, the same skin colour, or the same gender identity as other people, just to appreciate them as people that God made deliberately. God never made a mistake in how he or she crafted that other individual. the diversity crowd, the inclusive crowd, yeah, I'm all for diversity. I am all for inclusivity. Because the creation the God I worship created is an incredibly rich tapestry. It involves a lot of colour and a lot of difference. And I put it to you that your life will truly be enriched if you open your heart to other people and accept them as the image of God that they are created to be.